So that's when I moved to phase three. And so phase three really came about because of a book I read called Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte.
Mm.
And Tiago Forte, he explains a philosophy and a system for collecting information from all the sources that you can imagine in modern life, whether it's something that you read or it's something that you heard, or it's a PDF or something like that. And then he has a companion book, The Para Method, which is actually a filing system for how to store information that you gather based upon usefulness, because that's his defining thesis, is that the human brain is not designed to store information, it's designed to use information. And so let's use modern tools in order to be able to store the information so we can focus on being creative with that information.
I mean, so I really like that last part in particular, this whole we're trying to use information, because I find one of the most difficult things, Tim, is in a world filled with ideas. I mean, we have more information input opportunities than anyone has ever had in history. There's so much to hold on to. And oftentimes I see almost a desperation to hold on to it. So I'm curious, in this knowledge management space for yourself, how do you handle the issue or the push and pull between I want to learn all this stuff, but I don't know that I will ever be able to implement more than, say, 15 to 20% of it, depending on how much you collect? How do you handle that?
Well, so if you have a good system, it's the place that you're putting the information that's handling that weight, right? It's not your brain.
Right.
And so the value is that it's like, so for example, in the Para method, he divides up the information that you're collecting into, the first category are the active projects that you're working on. And then the next are areas of your life that may not be active projects, but maybe it's an area that you have an interest in, like artificial intelligence. And then maybe someday that'll be a project, you move it over. Then you've got the resources, which are things that you can put information like, hey, there's an article about opening statements, and I really like what this lawyer wrote about opening statements. I'm going to put it in the resources folder, and maybe someday it'll be a project, right? If I have a trial coming up and I have to give an opening statement, but it's going to stay in resources. And then A is for archives, and that's really the key, is that we have all of this information that we think maybe we'll use someday. But if you don't have a vehicle or an avenue where that is going to be used in the foreseeable future, then you just throw it in archive, and it's searchable if you need it somehow. But at the same time, it's not taking space from the active projects you're working on.
I think, the language that you use, archives, is kind of the key to all of this, because it's so easy to take something that maybe belongs in the archive space and say, oh, you know what? I'm really interested in that. And now that's going to be one of my areas, or now I'm going to consider that a primary resource. Like when you're going through and you're consuming new information, do you have a rough percentage or filtering system for how you treat the difference between this is an active piece of information versus an archived piece of information?
Well, the default is it's archived, right? And so a project is something that has an end date. So so that's the highest, that's the highest level of use. That is, you try to limit that. Maybe it's a dozen things that are going on right now. But the key is, under Tiago Forte's system, a project has a deadline. If it doesn't have a deadline, it's not a project. Maybe it's an area, maybe it's a resource.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. So when you're going through all of these inputs, it's okay, this has to fit into one of these spaces, or else it automatically gets moved to the archive. Now, what about the reverse, which is how can people be better at taking something that moves maybe archived or has been buried deep in the notes, and they go, you know what, I know I got some good ideas from that conference 5 years ago. How do we recall things from an archive space to make them active use materials?
Well, so you're using some sort of note-taking system.
Yeah.
Ideally, whether it's Evernote whether it's OneNote, whether it's Notion, it's someplace, an online source where that information is that's searchable. And
Yeah.
so then you can say, okay, hey, I've got this project. I remember there was a good speaker about, taking a law example. Hey, I've got a very complicated subrogation issue. And there was a great speaker on subrogation 5 years ago at my state bar association meeting. So I'm going to go back and into my archives. I'm going to pull out my notes from that. I'm going to move it to a project because I've got to solve this subrogation problem for one of my clients.
Okay.
And I'll keep it in that folder while I'm using it. And then, it goes, when that project's done, the great thing is when a project's completed, it just then becomes part of your archives.
So I could see this potential use case of AI in here that gets inserted into all this. I mean, Microsoft Copilot, Google's Gemini, these are both spaces where they're certainly experimenting with this and even making very active use of it, where now all of this information, you could just go in and talk to eventually your personal assistant and say, hey, I know I've seen someone do a talk about subrogation. Can you find that stuff for me? So there's still an element of humanity to this, of I have to remember or recall that I've seen it before. So are you adding layers of AI? I know Notion has AI, Copilot. Are you starting to integrate that in this system?
Yes. So I think that at least as of right now, Microsoft Copilot has is the furthest along in being able to take whether it's your Word documents, what you're storing in OneDrive, what the notes you have in OneNote, and then using that as the universe of information that the AI is using to respond to whatever prompt you're making. And so I've complained to you about this offline. that I went to the ABA Tech Show last year. I saw how far advanced Microsoft Copilot is. And so I have been transitioning. I told you I have almost 15,000 Evernotes. Well, this spring, I switched over to OneNote, and I'm doing everything in the Microsoft ecosystem in terms of note taking. Instead of Dropbox, I'm now using OneDrive, and it's just and the whole idea is that I want to have high quality information that I can trust when I'm engaging with a GPT. And so the best way to do it is to use a tool, and Google has one, and I think anybody is going to ultimately go that route. But I'm just saying that right now, what I've been told by people who are smarter than me about this issue is that Microsoft is just further along. And so it was as good as an excuse as any to say, okay, I'm going to fully commit to our overall overlords in Redland and just put my hands or my life in the hands of Microsoft.
That's right. I mean, we're all going to start making those decisions, right? And like you said, everyone's going to have their form of that. So this is all kind of happening. So if everyone's gaining access to, or at least has the opportunity to gain access to these AI tools, what do you think in the knowledge management space is going to be the edge for someone like you?
Well, it's quality information. Right. And so that's all of the things that we do to try to stay at the top of our game. So as you know, my specialty is truck accident law. Mm-hmm. I go to the best conferences in the country on truck accident law. I either speak or I attend every year. What I'm getting out of those, whether it's my notes from talking to people, whether it's the outlines from the speakers, is truly the highest quality information there is about truck accident litigation. If that's what I'm feeding into my AI tool, then the answers that I'm going to get are going to be better than if I just went to ChatGPT or Claude and typed in a similar prompt.
Yeah, there's certainly a level of curation that goes into all of this, because it is very easy at this point to go to, say, ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, give me all the information that I would need to successfully handle a truck accident case, break it down for me into the various stages. You keep drilling down and down and down, but eventually, you have to be able to delineate, at least in the current era that we're in, the difference between, say, a hallucination, the popular term for when AI just makes something up, and what is actually well curated information. So you go to some of these events, you're inputting all of this information to create a database that is well curated. So if you have a well curated database, over time, in supplementing that with AI, how much are you thinking about, here's how I'm going to let the AI pull other resources in for me versus I'm trying to also guard the quality of information?
Well, I think the key is that you're using different tools. I mean, so let me give you an example. Just right now, I mean, in many ways, ChatGPT is still the easiest thing to use for a particular prompt, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people feel like Claude writes better. So, when I find myself doing sometimes, well, I'll use three tools in a row. So let's say I want an answer to a question. I'll go to Perplexity first. Perplexity for me has pretty much taken over. I don't do Google searches anymore. I just go to Perplexity. That gives me sources, right? So now I have information that I'm comfortable in. I'm gonna use that in ChatGPT and get whatever style of output I want. But then if it's something I'm going to publish, I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it into Claude because right now, just, amongst the people I listen to on this, Claude maybe just is a little bit better writer right now. Yeah. And I think all of these tools are going to ebb and flow. But I think that's the way that I see AI power users right now is they're not using one tool. They recognize where each tool has its strength, and they're using a combination of the three.
Okay, so I'll save the really heavy esoteric question for a moment from here, because there's this big one I want to ask about all of that. But before then, someone's listening to this and they're going, okay, I love the idea of starting to manage my knowledge better. I've heard I could use Evernote. I could dive into the Microsoft suite of products. Also, I know that Tiago Forte has recommended Obsidian in the past. And I'm also just looking at all these paper notebooks and going, and all of my Microsoft Word documents. And going, I don't know that I'm ready to start handling this. How could someone get into this process if they are on the outside of it right now?
Well, the great thing is that enough people who've been doing this, there's just a general consensus that you always start moving forward. Okay, I'm going to start from today forward. You don't try to go backwards. If you have all of this information, whether it's an inbox full of emails, whether it's a bunch of notes, all the notes that I have on Evernote, I didn't spend 1,000 hours transferring those all into OneNote. I mean, maybe someday that'll be a project for an intern or a virtual assistant. But the idea is that you just set a date and say, okay, I'm going to start using this system going forward. And you'll be surprised at how robust, what you're putting together becomes when you in just 3 months' time, because we are getting so much information from so many different sources that just having a strategy for dealing with it now it is going to make you smarter and better able to manipulate that information really quickly.
Plus, then you don't have to have the whole, I learned something a dozen years ago, I know I've got it on a legal pad somewhere. Instead, you can really start from that point, and that is so valuable of, I'm going to start collecting the information that I need right now. I may have the opportunity, as my system becomes increasingly efficient, that should arguably free up some time for me to revisit past notes. By the way, you can take photos of notes that you've taken in the past, and those can get transcribed for you. It's something that ChatGPT can do. I've got some cool stuff that I'm going to share within the Genesis Mastermind that blew my mind recently on AI, because it is sort of wild how fast some of this is moving. And people don't even realize it. We're still doing basic level prompts when there's, we're doing first grade level prompts when there's, college level prompting available to us now. Which brings me to the slightly more esoteric question. You mentioned, Tim, wisely, that there's so many different AI tools available that have different purposes, excel in different things. Now we have, admittedly, or maybe it's just me, some level of concern of, as this starts to advance and it starts to bring everything towards a midpoint where, eventually AI is feeding itself information. It all seems to level out into a close area, the same way that we see major software programs at some point or another seem to even out. Let's take note-taking software as an example. Notion, Obsidian, Evernote, etc. They're all doing a lot of very similar things at this point, despite having various specializations in the future. With AI, what does it mean for us if AI starts to have a similar leveling off factor just for us as people?
So the metaphor that I use is it's like brands of cars, right? Some people they get in their car, and if it turns on and it gets them to where they want to go, then that is as attached they are to the car. They bought whatever was cheapest or whatever was on sale. Other people are car people, right?
Yep.
And they read about cars, and they go to car shows, and they have a brand that they like. And to me, that's how, that's sort of like AI, right? It's like you're going to be able to use AI to get you from point A to point B without having to dedicate your life to it. But we all know it's helpful to have somebody in your life who's a car guy, right?
That's right.
And it's like, hey, for me, that's my dad. It's like, hey, what should I do about this? Who should I go see? And so to me, that's how it's going to happen. Is you're going to have the equivalent of a car guy in your life, whether it's at work or it's in your family, and they're going to be the ones who are reading the latest stuff, and they're going to say, oh, actually, the latest studies show that ChatGPT 5.7 is blowing the doors off of Claude AI 6.2, and you got to move to that. And so I mean, it's like we're able to deal with that level of both complexity and sameness in other technology. And so I don't think that AI is going to be a lot different.
I think that's a really positive mindset. I appreciate that tempering force there. And I really like that analogy, Tim. And I'll say my father is the same way for me. When it comes to cars, look, kids, life, businesses, etc. I don't really have time to go look at all the Consumer Report stuff. I know, Dad, that you're the one who you read that recreationally. So tell me, which brand is doing well and which brand has suddenly taken a turn in the last 2 years? I just don't want to deal with maintenance, right? Same idea.
And that gets back to the point that you made earlier about curation, because that's the really powerful thing that I don't want to lose track of. And, that's why we're friends, Charlie, is because you are a curator of what law firms are doing around the country. But not just that, you're a curator of what, because of the other masterminds that you're in, what different industries are doing. And so I can't be a master in everything, but I can be friends with you and read your stuff. And then when I have a question, luckily, if you're in a mastermind group with you, you can say, hey, Charlie, tell me about this new intake software. Who's using it? Is it working? Because we can't master everything.
And sometimes it's a question about a really good leather bag to carry around, right? A great briefcase.
Absolutely. That's, I could have done the research, or I could have called my friend who is leather works on the side and say, hey, what do you think? And get 15 paragraph email with 5 links. But ultimately, I got a bag I still carry around today.
Yeah, it was funny. I know that you saw Tiffany Swedensky, Tiff, at a conference recently, and she mentioned that she complimented the bag. And you said, "Yeah, Charlie recommended it," and she texted me with a big like eye rolling emoji because she's like, "Yeah, that's quintessentially how all of this works, right?"
Yeah.
And actually, speaking of events, Tim, one thing I did want to ask you about is you've been a very active speaker of late. And one thing that I think is an interesting common thread between the two of us that I only realized recently is how much you and I both care about the audience. And, whether it's in the law or my background in theater and then the combined level of speaking, that's something that I've really noticed is whether you are in a very small group or a very large stage, you seem to have a deep interest in what the audience is experiencing and what you are delivering to them in that moment. And I'm so happy and delighted to see how many speaking opportunities you've gotten recently. So a couple of questions I'd like to just kind of drop on the table in front of us are, one, how are some of these speaking opportunities coming about for you? And two, how do you make the most of it both on the stage and off the stage?
Got it. Well, so they came about organically, and part of it I think helps because I like going to seminars and learning from smart people, and so the joke around the office is the Iowa. Trial Lawyers Association annual meeting is like a holiday for me because that we bring in these great speakers from around the country, and I'm there, and I'm at every seminar, and so I appreciate a good performance, right?
Yep.
And I recognize that you can give really good information, but also be interesting, entertaining, and so because I was a fan first, once I had enough, I guess, knowledge in legal areas and I started getting asked to speak, it was really important to me to do a good job. And so there was kind of an evolution of how how my speaking has gone. At first, it was something where I was just honored to be asked, right? It was flattering to be asked, and sure, I'll do it. And then it got to the point where, okay, I'm putting in like 10 hours worth of work for every hour that I'm talking. So I've got to be more strategic about this or I'm just going to burn myself out.
Yeah.
And so then it became, okay, is this an audience that I want to be in front of? Are these people that would be helpful for me to be known in front of? Or is this a subject matter that it would be helpful for me to do 10 hours of research in? Is there something going on in an area of the law that I'm working on or a case that I'm working on where it'd be helpful to do a deep dive, and this is an excuse to do it? Or the last thing is it's the medium, right? So, and that's really how it started for me. Was I knew that I was a judicial law clerk in Iowa, and so I saw some very like over almost 30 years ago, right? The people first using PowerPoint presentations to do, to try a case. And I realized, well, I need to be good at that. Well, I'm not going to get good at it if the 1 to 2 times a year I'm trying a case is the only time that I'm putting together a PowerPoint presentation or speaking, with slides. And so I felt like, okay, if I accept these speaking engagements and I get a chance to get better at PowerPoint, when it comes time to using it at trial, I'm going to be a pro. And so that was kind of, so it probably, now that I think about it, it started where it's like, hey, it was an honor to do it. Hey, this is a good excuse to learn the medium. Yeah. And then it became, hey, what is the benefit here for me long term? Is it because of the audience or is it because of the deep dive I'm going to get to do in this subject matter? And so once I started speaking, being more strategic about the speaking offers I got, then it just so happened that people liked what I was doing, and it just kind of builds organically. And so, but now it's a situation where, I have a checklist that I follow, when
Nice.
somebody contacts me, because, you know, trial lawyers in particular, right? Nobody has ever gone broke appealing to the ego of trial lawyers. And,
I've said that quote credited to Tim Semelroth a few times in my life.
and so when I get an offer, I always first have to check my ego, because it's like,
Yep.
oh wow, they're asking me to go here. What an honor. And then I ask myself, is this an audience that I'm interested in? Is this a topic that I want to do more research in? And then now it's okay, how can I use this in 10, 15 different ways? So are they going to give me a link to my website so that I get the SEO benefit of it? Is this something I can promote on our social media channels? Is this something where when I get there, so here's my latest hack. Okay. When we talked last year, Charlie, you asked me, how should people get in touch with me? And I said, my goal in 2024 is to learn how to use LinkedIn effectively.
Yeah.
And so here, and the good news is I've made good progress on that. But here is the hack. Okay. When I get the list of the speakers for
Yeah.
whatever program I'm in, if I'm not already connected to them, I send them a connection saying, hey, I am looking forward to speaking with you on this panel. I really hope we have a chance to touch base. I can connect with them that way. You get the benefit of, they're like, wow, well, I'm a big deal. That's why I got asked to speak at this seminar. So Semelroth must know something, or somebody, if he got asked. And then when I'm there, I'm taking notes in OneNote, right? Because it's all going into my second brain. But every once in a while, right, there's a speaker who, lets you kind of put your brain on autopilot for a little while. Hopefully not me, but, there's usually somebody like that. And so in that situation, then I just start looking around the room and say, okay, who am I not connected with on LinkedIn? And, it's like, hey, great to see you at this event. And so now my goal is, in addition to being able to get the SEO benefits, I also am trying to make professional connections on LinkedIn at any event I'm going to. And then obviously I'm trying to get pictures and in some cases videos, so that I can turn around and turn that into content that I can use online as well.
Yeah, that's a whole system for maximizing it. That I hope people are hearing that and going, "Oh, these are all the little ways that." There's never a time that you truly have to be inactive. What you said there, Tim, when you have the speech that does let your brain go on autopilot, you do have a choice in that moment of, am I going to open social media in the middle of someone's talk, or am I going to remain engaged with the space that I'm in and think about, I have this multitude of resources available to me, both in information capital and human capital, and how do I turn this into something more? Now, on top of that, one thing that I've really noticed about you, Tim, is in the space of what we might call the fame game, you're not someone who is interested in fame for fame's sake. You clearly view it, or at least I would say, right? This is my interpretation. What I see is Tim understands the value of utilizing those opportunities and is happy to play ball in that way, but that you don't actively look at it as, I'm going to become famous because boy, oh boy, it's fun being famous. I see that as a trap that happens often. How do you manage that mindset wise, with you being someone I see as very grounded, but also has a very strong and growing national audience?
Well, so I see this speaking as part of my role in my firm. We are the largest personal injury firm in Iowa. We have offices in 3 different cities. We've got 17 lawyers now. And so part of the highest use that I can be to the firm is to make sure that when people, no matter where you are in the country, when you think of Iowa, when you think of an Iowa issue, you think of our firm. And so it's not so that I get recognized places or that I get a bunch of likes on social media.
Right.
I mean, the purpose is that we want to be a resource for all things Iowa. And to anybody we meet. And so one of the great ideas that came out of a recent mastermind is I'm still tweaking the edges of, but I registered the URL Tim from Iowa.
There we go.
So when I speak at national events outside the state, that's going to be the URL that I'm promoting. Because that's what I tell people when I'm at conferences. Like, hey, you need something in Iowa. There are only 3 million people in Iowa, right? There are only 7,000 lawyers, and I probably know almost all of them. And
that's
so,
right.
and if I don't know them, somebody in my firm does.
Yeah.
If you need something in Iowa, reach out to our firm. We can help you. And if that translates into a referral, then obviously that's fantastic. But it's also a chance to do favors for people, and we all know that we need favors in other states all the time. And so if I can do a favor for somebody in Texas, then maybe they're available to help me the next time I need help in Texas.
That's right. I love the big game that you're playing, Tim. It's just fantastic. So if people are interested in connecting with you, seeing where you're going next and speaking, or just following the journey, learning from you, etc., where's the best place for them to go?
Right now it's LinkedIn, man.
Yeah, it is.
It was my goal, when we talked last year, and I'm publishing, 3-4 times a week, and one of the things that I really like doing is that when I go to these conferences to speak, I get to meet all these other great speakers, right? And so I'm taking all my notes. And so one of the things that I've started doing are Tim's takeaways. And so whenever I go to a conference, I will come up with 3 to 5 great nuggets. I'll attribute them to the other speakers and say, hey, these are smart people doing things that caught my eye. I want to share that with my group. So anybody who wants to connect on LinkedIn, my goal being on LinkedIn is to have a network of lawyers that know me and that I can learn from, and so please connect with me there.
Excellent. All right, Tim, last little question for you. You know what it is. What are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
All right. So strangely enough, what I am reading right now is the Scout Law Merit Badge book. And the reason why is because I found out that they have a program in my community called Merit Badge University. And so I decided that we would sponsor that for the local Scout Council. And so I will be speaking in a couple of weeks on Law Merit Badge. And so that's the book awesome. I have at my desk right now. And of course, just like we talked about, we've got a raffle, so that we can add people to our list, adults to our list, not the kids. We're raffling off one of those portable campfire rings that Snoop Dogg endorses. And we're going to be taking pictures, and we're doing video, and ultimately my goal with that is I looked around, and there's all kinds of web pages that provide resources as to how to get your Law Merit Badge. Nobody has done a video course, and so
there we go.
So I'm going to create a video course that anybody in the country can use to get their Law Merit Badge, and that'll be sponsored by our firm. So that's what I'm reading. Okay, what I am watching is I just got done watching the latest season of Slow Horses.
How is that?
Oh, fantastic!
Okay.
I think we're on season 3 or season 4. It's the typical British seasons, so it's anywhere from 6 to 8 episodes. Gary Oldman is absolutely fantastic in it, and it's something that my daughter are watching together. She's at college at Iowa State, but we text each other after we watched an episode. So I highly recommend that. We're really excited for the upcoming season of The Diplomat. She and I agreed that we would watch that together over the holiday break. So we're not gonna watch it when it comes out in a week or two. And then in terms of what I'm listening to, as you know, I'm a big fan of podcasts, audiobooks. And so what I'm listening to right now is Unreasonable Hospitality.
Good in.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So if there are lawyers who want to start a book club talking about unreasonable hospitality and how to take the lessons of fine dining in New York City and apply that to your law firm, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm just really enthused about the book and trying to think of different ways that we can use the lessons from that book, which are incredible, by the way. It's not just about making your customers feel welcome. There's just as much in it about managing people,
yes,
and about empowering your employees as anything else. And so it's just a fantastic book. But I could talk about that all day right now.
The two books I cite as being my favorites of the last year, business-wise, are Unreasonable Hospitality and Buy Back Your Time. I mean, just kind of can't go wrong with that pairing right there. I'll tell you, our mutual friend, Len Spada, he's doing some cool things with Unreasonable Hospitality, including having a committee in his firm that focuses on how to bring those ideas into the practice, which is really cool.
Very cool.
Tim, my friend, thank you so much for your time, your insight, your wisdom. I love the topic that you brought here, knowledge management, because it's more relevant than ever with the AI tools and with the massive amount of information. I know people are going to be researching a lot more on Perplexity, which they should be doing for sure. So I really appreciate you, Tim.
Hey, I'm 2 down, 3 more, and I'm going to be in the 5-timers club for law firm outcome. I'm really excited.
We'll need your measurements for that smoking jacket. We'll see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.